Hey, what is up guys? This is Nishi from MST.TV here, back with another Market Watch episode. So sneak peek weekend is over. Hopefully you guys all pulled well. I think I might be pretty lucky with this set. I opened 2 boxes. I got 2 QCRs and a Fuwa, so that was really cool. Anyways, today we are actually taking a look at a few higher rarity cards that are currently trending on the market. Now, normally we don't look at these specifically, but today it's going to be a bit different because even though a lot of these are the more expensive versions of cards, we're talking about certain QCRs and ultimate rares that are still reasonably affordable, not cards that are hundreds and hundreds of dollars that most players wouldn't be able to access. Of course, we can also still keep an eye on the lower rarity versions of these cards, even though they aren't currently trending, since they will likely be among those that a lot of players are going to be looking to pick up in the future in order to play. Let's get started. Alright, kicking things off, we have a card that I definitely wasn't expecting to look at anytime soon. It's Evil Swarm Helium Trope. Now this card is a level 4 vanilla monster from the Evil Swarm archetype. Now, even though the archetype isn't exactly the most modern, there is a boss monster from the theme that's really good, and that is Evil Swarm Ophion. It's a rank 4 Xyz that stops both players from special summoning level 5 or higher monsters. Now, in the OCG, we've seen a few Rarity decks that are actually teching in 2 copies of Helium Trope, Ophion in the extra deck, and then a couple of the Primite cards from Rage of the Abyss that are being used to bring out these vanillas for free. This either allows you to access a generic rank 4 like an Abyss Dweller, or in specific matchups like Fire King or Branded, go into Ophion, who acts as a floodgate to help supplement your end board. Personally, I do think this is a really cool tech and seems pretty strong. I just don't know how good or consistent this is, since it does require you to run a few bricks in the main deck. Now, price-wise, it's really just the DT version that's currently trending. This card was down at $4 to $5 before, but we've now seen it shoot right up to $10 on TCG Player with hardly any listings available. The other printings are the Super from Hidden Arsenal 7, and then I think it was a Shatter Foil as well. Either of those copies is going to be quite cheap and just cost you around $1 per copy. If you are interested in playing Rarity in the future, definitely consider picking up a few of the Supers so that you have access to the cards if you want to play them, but probably have your DT copies ready to offload, since a lot of players historically are going to be willing to pay a premium for them. Up next, we're taking a look at Blue Eyes Spirit Dragon. So this card is one of the boss monsters for the Blue Eyes deck. It's a level 9 synchro that requires the non-tuner to be a Blue Eyes monster. It has a couple of useful effects. It stops players from summoning 2 or more monsters at the same time, which seems weird, but this is actually really important because this card came out back in the Pendulum era. It lets you, once per turn, negate the effect of a card in the graveyard, and then you can also tribute it as a quick effect to special summon a light dragon synchro monster from your extra deck, but then destroy it during the end phase. So in the Blue Eyes deck, at least from the list that I've seen early on in the OCG, this card is actually played at 3. It's one of the most important cards for the theme. Interestingly enough, this card was reprinted in Rarity Collection 2. Now before that, it was only ever a secret and ultra rare, so those original versions have been done a bit dirty, since you can now get those same rarities once again. The version that has gone up noticeably, however, is of course the quarter century printing. This card was literally a $5 to $7 card back when the Rarity Collection 2 set first came out, as everyone just assumed it was more of a collector thing. Spirit Dragon did jump once again when we saw that the Blue Eyes stuff was first revealed in the OCG, but since we're now seeing the deck actually topping and competing well, we've now seen QCR Spirit Dragons up at $35 to $40. This is way up, though the good thing is that you can play this card in almost any rarity that you want to, since even the Prismatic, Ulti, Platinum, and Collector's versions are all pretty cheap, and I'd argue that the Platinum almost looks nicer than the QCR, and then of course we have Supers, Ultras, and Secrets for you players that want more budget-friendly options. Anyways, the structure deck doesn't come out until February of 2025, so you do still have some time to get these and throw them in your binder for when the structure deck does drop. The next card I want to touch on briefly is Allure of Darkness. Allure is an extremely old card. It's almost like a trade-in, but instead of discarding as cost, you draw first and then you banish a dark monster from your hand afterwards, or if you don't have a dark monster that you can banish, you have to send your entire hand to the graveyard. Now this card is currently being looked at because of the Malice deck, a theme coming in Crossover Breakers, where the main deck monsters want to be banished because they can then special summon themselves out. So Allure not only lets you draw into more cards, but it gets your combos going as well. Now, I believe that Allure is generally played at 2 in this strategy, though I could see it being used anywhere from 1 to 3 copies depending on the hand trap lineup in the format. Now before, Allure was a card that was always expensive, even the commons were consistently $4 to $5. Now the card has had quite a few low rarity printings. All of those versions are probably going to only cost you $1 or $2 if you just need access to the card. However, there are a few versions that are worth noting that are definitely more expensive. Obviously, we have the ultimate rares from back in Phantom Darkness. Those are crazy. They're like $160 to $180 each, though we do want to keep in mind that this card could be used in Time Wizard formats as well, so some players might want the alties for that. However, the card also randomly has 2 expensive Speed Duel printings. The secret rares from one of the boxes are now $12 each, and the Speed Duel Tournament Pack 3 Ultras are up at $20. It's strange because that secret rare version is the only secret rare printing of the card, so that's the second highest rarity version. Now personally, I'm not convinced by any of these printings. I would personally rather just play like one of the Ultras, maybe the Raging Battle Promo Supers. One thing I would keep an eye out for, especially with this card, is the possibility of it being reprinted in either the Quarter Century Bonanza set or Crossover Breakers itself, since it could get some holo printings to make it more accessible, as well as access to some of those high-end printings that are more intended for the TCG. Speaking of cards with multiple options for high rarity printings, we next have Abyss Dweller. So personally, I was really happy to see Dweller in Rarity Collection 2. Sure, the alties are really nice, but I actually just really wanted Abyss Dweller in Secret Rare. It is one of my favorite cards out of the set. We all know what Dweller is. It's a generic rank 4 Xyz monster that can stop your opponent from activating any card effects in the graveyard for this turn. Of course, with the Ryziel deck coming out to the TCG in December, they're going to be able to make Dweller really easily, and it's definitely a card that you're going to want to have access to in the toolbox, since it's good in several matchups such as Fire Kings. Now, Dweller has actually been a pretty cheap card for a while. It got holo reprints in Dual Devastator and the Secret Forces, but then in Rarity Collection 2, every single Yu-Gi-Oh player in the world basically got access to Abyss Dweller. The 2 printings that are the highest rarity versions have gone up in price, however. Technically, the QCR is the highest rarity. They were down at like $7 or so after the set settled, but now they're actually up to $20 each. And then with the most expensive version, and what is in my opinion the higher rarity version because it's more difficult to obtain, it's the Ultimate Rare. They were down at $20 to $25 just a month or 2 ago, but they're now up to $50 each with relatively few quantities available. I think that just how much play this card actually sees will depend on the format and what other decks are going to be good. It's up to you guys whether or not you want to play with more of these higher end printings. If you do want to play on more of a budget, I would definitely consider looking at either the Secrets or the Collector's Rares out of Rarity Collection 2, both of which are really nice versions that are only around $1 each. Alright, this one's really crazy to me. We next have Chicken Game. So this card is one that just got unbanned on the most recent list and was put to 1. Now functionally, it's just a field spell version of Upstart Goblin. It allows the turn player to pay 1,000 life points to either draw a card, destroy this card, or give your opponent 1,000 life points. So to be honest, I'm not 100% sure behind the reasoning for this card spiking, or exactly what deck it is that's using it. It seems like a decent option for decks like maybe Yubel that are already running Terraforming to search for Nightmare Throne, but then you're playing, if you open Terraforming and Nightmare Throne, you can activate the Terraforming to search for Chicken Game, draw a card, and then commit into the Nightmare Throne. The other thing is that in something like Tenpai Dragons, I guess you could make Ancient Fairy Dragon. Maybe in Blue Eyes, you could tag into Ancient Fairy Dragon with Spirit Dragon. You get access to this card before blowing it up and then searching for Mausoleum of White. If you guys do know exactly what deck it is that's playing this or who it is that talked about the card and caused it to jump in price, let me know down in the comment section. Anyways, this card only has 1 printing, and it came out back in Clash of Rebellion, which was almost a decade ago. After this list came out, Chicken Game went from being like 50 cents to being a $5 card, but then it quickly fell back down to around $2 to $3. Now, however, the card has out of nowhere shot up to between $10 to $15, with $10 being around the highest that it's sold for on TCG Player, but $15 being the cheapest copy available. Personally, I would stay away from this card since it seems pretty likely to get a reprint either as like an OTS Tournament Pack Super or maybe in the Quarter Century Bonanza. Definitely try to dig this card up out of your bulk if you can find it to see if you can offload them for some free value. Up next, we have Secret 6 Samurai Kizaru. So in Rage of the Abyss, we got some new 6 Samurai support cards, and they're actually pretty cool. I think the new level 6 Xian is really good, and the 2 new monsters that can special summon themselves out are really cool as well. 6 Samurais have actually gotten several waves of support throughout the game's history, but perhaps the most forgettable one was back in 2017 with a side set called Spirit Warriors. It gave us the secret 6 Samurai cards, and while they were kinda cool looking, they didn't really fix the problems with the deck and didn't make it any more meta relevant at all. However, players are now looking at older 6 Samurai cards to use with the new cards, and one of the pieces being considered is Kizaru. Kizaru on special summon searches for a 6 Samurai from your deck with a different attribute than those of the 6 Samurais on your field, and it can also banish itself from your graveyard to save exactly one of your 6 Samurais from being destroyed. Now this card is held back because it doesn't have a way to special summon itself. You have to summon it out with something like Asceticism in order to be able to get that search. However, this card is still worth noting because it was one of the short prints back in Spirit Warriors, so this card is actually quite difficult to find. Kizaru has been down at around $12 to $15 for the last year or so, but with the 6 Samurai support coming out, we now see this card sitting between $25 and $30 on TCG Player. This one is a kind of weird one. I did see one list online running 3 copies of this, but a bunch of others that just cut it completely. Looking at the card, I think it seems like something you would play at either 1 or 0. So personally, if I owned this card, even if I wanted to play 6 Samurais, I might keep 1 copy for myself to use, but it's definitely something I'd be looking to offload my excess copies of while there's so much 6 Samurai hype. And finally, the last card we're looking at for today is Ultimate Slayer. This card's a pretty interesting spell card. It lets you send a monster from your extra deck to the graveyard to bounce the same type of extra deck monster back to your opponent's extra deck, and your opponent can't respond to this card with monster effects. There are a ton of monsters that have effects when they're sent directly to the graveyard, such as Garura or Herald of the Arclight, so Ultimate Slayer is definitely a potentially useful card. In fact, in the OCG, this card has seen a ton of play recently. Right now, players in the OCG are siding this card against the Ryzeal strategy, using it to deal with their Xyz monsters, while also sending Mereologic Aggregator to the graveyard to negate the Ryzeal field spell. In fact, Ultimate Slayer is seeing so much play in the OCG that it's getting some attention here, as we saw Aggregator actually jump up in price a couple of market watches ago. With Ultimate Slayer's reprint in Rarity Collection 2, we see just the high-end versions of the card affected. The QCR has gone from being $6 or $7 to now being up at $15 each. The sad one, however, is the Starlight rare from Power of the Elements, which was at $120 a year ago, but with the reprint in Rarity Collection has gone down to just $40 for the Unlimited and $45 for the first edition. It's going to be interesting moving forward to see if there's any movement with the Starlight, because if the card actually sees play, we're not sure if the Starlight will actually rebound in price, or if we'll just see the QCR go up in price to eventually meet the price of the Starlight or get kind of close to it. One thing we do want to be careful of, however, is that in the OCG, this card saw a lot of play early on when it was first released in the OCG, but that success never really carried over to the TCG here for whatever reason. That said, it might be risky to hold on to some of these higher end printings of the card, and you might want to settle for something like the secret rares or the collector's rares, whatever lower rarity but still nice version you prefer to play for yourself, where you aren't as invested in the card being relevant. Alright guys, that is all I have for today. Definitely some interesting stuff. It's really cool to see how all of the stuff from Rarity Collection 2 is moving in price. I know a lot of us take a look at Rarity Collection 2 and we think, oh, you know, that was such an underwhelming set. There wasn't really anything that great in there, but it was definitely just kind of the timing of it. And I think we can definitely expect to see more continued buyouts moving forward as different cards from Rarity Collection 2 actually become meta relevant. Anyways, guys, if you did enjoy today's Market Watch episode, please make sure you let me know by hitting that thumbs up button. Make sure you leave a comment in the comment section down below. Hit subscribe if you haven't already. And until next time, guys, don't forget to hold on to your MST.TV.